All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, and up to the interview portion of the program. And today on the telephone, we have the illustrious Perry James. Let me give you a little bit of a history on Perry James. He has represented the best and brightest professional wrestling as a wrestling manager at Memphis Power Pro Wrestling, North American Championship Wrestling, and numerous independent wrestling events throughout the country. The self-proclaimed greatest manager is best known from NACW's weekly TV program Warzone and Wrestling Extreme Overloads program, as seen on Comcast Sports Southeast and international markets such as Diego Garcia, Germany, Malaysia, South America, and more. You can currently read Perry's personal columns at ClassicWrestlingVideos.com.
That's it.
And he's also on Facebook, and we'll talk about all that stuff coming up in the later in the interview. But right now, welcome to the program, the illustrious Perry James. Perry, how you doing?
Thank you, my friend. It's the one and only. So everybody, please don't stand up. Go ahead and take a seat. We'll have a little education lesson between the one and only Mr. Ricky Regal and the illustrious Perry James.
Well, I tell you what, some of these people need to be schooled, Perry, and apparently from what some of the videos that you and my friend Dion Johnson have been putting up on Facebook, you guys are kind of the same mind that I have. And speaking of those interviews, and we're going to talk more about those a little bit later, but was there any specific company or corporation or fed you guys were talking about, or was it kind of like the indie promotions as a whole as they stand right now?
Oh, no. I think it's as a whole. I think indie wrestling as a whole is in trouble. And so I said, when they came to me about writing the blog, and of course I had the idea for the Wrestling Rant, so I said, well, these are the issues I'm going to raise. I'm going to do it and say it the way I want to. I don't care if people don't like it and people get mad. I think there's issues in these independents. We can sit around and not say nothing and let it go on as usual, which has pretty much been done, or, smart Alex like me can get on the blogs and write about it and do wrestling rants, and of course that's what I do.
And the thing about it too, and you mentioned that the guys seem to get really upset when you call them out. But man, I tell you what, some of these guys, the very ones that are getting so upset, in my opinion, are the ones that don't need to be a part of the business in the first place. What do you think? Sure.
Well, what is the problem? And I've heard you guys talk about Jay, and I love Jay Eagle, and I consider him a friend. But this is what, and Jay knows I disagree with him. Jay's mentality is that everybody deserves to be a part of wrestling.
Yeah.
And if you go to one of his cards, you'll see that. My deal has always been, guess what? Certain guys don't belong in our business. You belong buying a ticket, or, if you have a passion for the business, find something to do around the business. Maybe you're an announcer, or maybe you make a great referee, or maybe you'll just make a great fan, or you're Collins a manager. A lot of guys ask me, Ricky, they say, why don't you get in the ring, Perry James? And my answer is real simple, because I don't belong in the ring.
Yeah.
I cannot do what Ricky Regal does. I cannot do what my pal Dion Johnson does. I don't kid myself in thinking that I'm a wrestler. And I have so much respect, Ricky, for the business and for people that do it. I don't want to discredit what you guys do and what so many others have done for me to put on the singlet or a bunch of shorts and tennis shoes and go in there and discredit what you guys do. And I wish there's a lot more people. Everybody says they respect wrestling, but I'm here to tell you, very few really and truly respect professional wrestling.
That's an excellent point. And a matter of fact, because there's a lot of guys who, and you're exactly right. I mean, everybody, I respect the business, I respect, but they can't tell you one thing that they actually respect. So it's
they respect because they can get out in front of 25 people, and for one night they can be the center of attention. And I think that's what they respect. They couldn't be anything anywhere else. So in certain places, and it's getting to be a lot. I mean, there's a lot of places that's doing, it's just not Jay. And I'm not going to single Jay out. Jay has his deal, and Jay's been running, for years. But when you take the majority of indie wrestling, and this is the premise, hey, everybody deserves a chance, then you hurt your money and your chance to go out here and to do what you do clearly better than they do. And not only that, you kill these towns. People want to know why promoters sit around and hey, I got a great crowd, I drew 50 people. It's because they killed these towns that used to draw 700-800 people or 1,200 people.
Right.
They've literally just killed these towns with this crap fest. And of course, stuff like $5 wrestling. Are you familiar with this $5 wrestling stuff?
No, I don't think I'm familiar with $5 wrestling.
Okay, $5 wrestling was a premise put out by High Spots, and the whole premise there is, well, let us find the crappiest wrestling, let us put it on camera, and we're going to sell it to people. And of course, what we're seeing is the wrestling is so bad, it's funny. And so they have a couple of comedians, and they do voiceovers. And what I'm wanting to know,
Perry, is that the thing that Colt Cabana's doing?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Him and some comedian out of Chicago.
That's right. Yeah.
And so what I'm wanting to understand is when we do $5 wrestling in Lawrence, South Carolina, and I'm just using Lawrence as an example.
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think that tells the people coming to these shows? And when another promotion wants to come in behind a $5 wrestling card, what do you think that says to people thinking about coming to wrestling again in Lawrence? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And I won't even go into the fact some of the video and some of the people they used to sell this junk.
Yeah.
Which I think they took advantage of some guys in Burke County that didn't have no right being on camera to begin with. They're one of those people that probably, as much of a passion they have for the business, they don't have no right being in the business. But yet they were used to sell this video, and of course, with the whole premise is they are. The wrestling is so bad, it's funny. And this is the kind of people that get up, and they're always the first one that wants to talk about how much they respect professional wrestling.
Good point. And you mentioned that Burke County thing. I'm actually familiar with that whole deal. And for the people who may not know what that Burke County thing was about, kind of give people a little bit of background on that Burke County, that whole, what was it, Heroes of Burke County or whatever it was?
Well, I just say, and this is how behind the times I guess I am. I'm just a little old school Perry James. Yeah. I just found out about this probably a few months ago. Yeah. And I think the whole premise was behind that is these guys obviously loved wrestling, but they had no business being in wrestling.
Yeah.
These guys obviously had some issues.
Right.
And those issues were used to basically make fun of these guys.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, that's, I'm not sure if you can get any lower.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? I don't stand up here and try to, put myself on a pedestal. But I think guys need to look at themselves in the mirror. If this is what you've got to do to make a living at wrestling or make money at wrestling, then, in my book, you don't deserve to be in wrestling. There's an old saying Tim Horner used to tell me, they may know the business, but they don't know your business. They think they know the wrestling business, but they don't know Perry James's business. And I think that's pretty apparent by people that, get all upset and all mad at these blogs. It lets me know that I'm taking care of my business.
Well, and it also lets you know that you're hitting pretty close to home, too.
Sure. Exactly.
Perry, we're coming up on a break here. Before we get to the break, tell me a little bit about this, what is it, Memphis Power Pro Wrestling and North American Championship Wrestling.
Memphis was a former WWE, it's probably one of the first developmental companies with WWE. And when I started in the late 98, 97, I got to Memphis in 2000. And this is at when they first opened the OVW. Me and the boys, and me and Dion, which and of course a guy named Bobby Horn, Sir Mo, which was trained by Gene Anderson too, which happened to train you. And we got together and we formed, those guys was a tag team, I was their manager. We were able to catch on and get dates. Anyway, it landed us at OVW for a shot in front of Cornette. And Cornette didn't have, room per se for guys that he couldn't, WWE wasn't going to sign on a deal right away. So he told us to go to Memphis. And they were moving in the process of moving the developmentals from Memphis to OVW, but he thought that would be a good spot for us. And that's where we went. And we worked at the historical WMC TV studios, and that's probably was the highlight for me. I didn't really care for Randy Hales, the promoter at the time. He was a descendant from Jerry Jarrett days, but he was basically the promoter. But I think the highlight was just being there and cutting promos with Dave Brown, and I was such a huge mark for Buildings, and of course probably a huge mark for Dave Brown because he had been announcing wrestling for over 30 years. So it was pretty cool. I wasn't probably polished enough like I needed to be, but I certainly learned a lot, and I was glad I had the opportunity. NACW came about once I came back from Memphis a couple years later under Ben Throckmorton.
Let me hold you up right there. We're up on a break here. When we get back from the break, we'll pick it up when you entered the NACW and going forward from there. We'll be right back here on Inside Wrestling Radio with Perry James coming up next. All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, and on the phone today we have the illustrious Perry James. And before the break, Perry was telling us his thoughts on the indie circuit as it stands. And then before the break, we were going right into some of his history. And we'd gotten up to when you had entered North American Championship Wrestling there, Perry. And tell me a little bit about that time.
North American Championship Wrestling, the promoter was Ben Throckmorton. He started running toward the coast of North Carolina. Eventually started branching out across the state, and I came and was fortunate enough, and I consider it a pleasure enough to be a part of it in 2003. I only did North American Championship Wrestling up until it turned into WXO, and of course it grew television-wise and attendance-wise. We eventually got on Comcast Sports Southeast, which was a big leg up for us because we was able to go into 13 southeastern states and 36 major markets. We was also able to carry it overseas into Germany and different countries over there. And so I just primarily, here's the thing, and this is what I kind of put myself different than everybody else. I kind of went and worked for everybody when I first got started. What set me aside and what I thought was a big plus for anybody that I worked for is that if Fred across the street knew he could see me at an NACW show the next month, then I made sure I didn't go and work for some renegade the month before.
Right.
And so I was real cognizant of what the promotion was trying to do, and that I stayed, I made sure I took care of business, not only just for myself, but also for the promotion, because, if what's so special if all you're doing is, working for a bunch of promoters, and, you're going to ruin the town for the big stuff that comes to town, and what eventually could, lead to bigger and better things, which it did for me. So
tell me about those bigger and better things.
Well, it provided me an opportunity to be known in places that I otherwise would not be known. You know what I mean? When you have a Comcast Sports Southeast that's putting you on every week, that's why people in Florida know who Perry James is. That's why the blog has been so receptive since I started with classic wrestling videos. It provides me an opportunity, and people still remember. It's been 7 years, and I'm still shocked they remember, but they still do, and I'm glad they do.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for leaving that lasting impression like that. How did the gig with Classic Wrestling Videos come up with writing the column there?
I've been writing the column Opinionated Fact. I actually started that when I first got in the business in 1998. I came down for a guy named Kelly Aaron out of Newberry, South Carolina. I actually lived in Newberry for a couple of years. And me and a roommate actually came up with a program that we were going to sell on the cards down there for Kelly Aaron's. And so one of the things that I wrote in there was my own little column in that program. It was Opinionated Fact, and it was all about, at the time, WCW and WWF. And so I've always diddled around with it, and then the opportunity came. Ben Throckmorton started ClassicWrestlingVideos.com, and I called him. I said, well, what do you think if I started writing this blog? How do you feel about that? And we get together, and maybe people might find it entertaining enough to come and check out from time to time. And he thought it was a good idea, and that's where we are now. And I'm very fortunate that people have come and checked my little words out, and sometimes they get all bothered about it. So I'm astonished, but I'm grateful at the same time.
Sure, and I've actually read some of your stuff. If you haven't read any of Perry's stuff, you definitely need to go up to ClassicWrestlingVideos.com and check out his columns up there, because you cover pretty much the gamut of the business up there, Perry. I mean, you talk about national stuff as well as local stuff, and recently was there some, and I didn't get to follow all the links. I kept noticing something about some contact with some former WWE writers.
Yeah, my buddies. They're certainly my buddies. The background on these guys is, I'll tell you, they're Court Bauer, Dave Lagana, who I guess he's still with Ring of Honor. He may not be now. They've, I think, getting ready to enter TV. I can't think. DeJoseph, and I wish Chris DeJoseph. DJ. DJ was the one, is the big fat guy up in the WWE, and he used to dance around and pour all the baby oil and all that stuff, and be real. So, being the great creative mind that he is, that was his claim to fame. Well, all of those used to be former WWE writers.
That was he went, the Dick Johnson or something like that.
I think that was his name.
Yeah, yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah,
these guys, they here recently, I've noticed everybody wants to follow their tweets, and everybody's so interested in what these guys have to say. And of course, I hear things. I know people. One of these things these people always love to do, guys like Court Bauer and Legana, they love to blame everybody else in the business or everybody up in WWE, namely the agent, because their ideas a lot of times got squashed. And as you can see, as bad as the writing was up there and still is,
right.
You can see a lot of their ideas got by.
Yeah,
you know what
definitely.
I mean? and that probably is the problem of a lot of, my criticism of wrestling now, but that's WWE's stance. They want to be a variety show and everything else. They want to be everything else except professional wrestling. Yeah, so I just caught them out on it. I figured they're going to put over each other as creative geniuses, and there's a bunch of geniuses everywhere, as you can imagine.
Sure.
I figured I'd be a genius too, and told them that basically I was glad that the agents did shut down what ideas they were able to, and I don't think they took to that too much. And I just call them out like I see it. And so I decided to write a blog about these guys. I wanted people to know that when you see these new wrestling news sites, you hear these names, they put over them as being creative power and all this geniusing they do. These guys are morons, in my opinion, of course.
Right.
And I'm glad they're former WWE writers, but there's more just like them up there. Ultimately, that's the problem. And I took an excerpt. A lot of was made with Court Bauer, and because WWE signed this Mystico out of Mexico.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't do anything except use his words. And if people will go to the blog at classicwrestlingvideos.com, you'll kind of see where this Court Bauer and his ideas about where wrestling should be, and you'll understand they're very opposite of where I think the business needs to be and should be. So.
Yeah, and the thing about that, Perry, is the fact of the matter is when WWE hires quote-unquote creative, one of the prerequisites is that you have some background in writing fiction, I guess, for scripted programming and stuff like that. And I think that has really damaged the business, all these scripted promos. And a classic or a first-rate example of that is The Rock reappearing this just past Monday night and blowing everything else they've done over the last probably 5 years away with that one promo that he cut for 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I have nothing. I'm not a Rock hater. I have nothing but respect for The Rock. In my opinion, he paid his dues too.
Sure.
He came through that Memphis studio as well, and he did. He don't need a writer, and guess what? Austin don't need one either. And a lot of great ones don't. And, I think I listened to an interview with your former manager, who I first saw back at South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. I'll never forget that when I saw him, I knew I'd see him, the big time again.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think during his interview with you, he put it very clear.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make it any better. That's the problem with these writers and with these interviews. They don't seem genuine. They're not from the heart, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you can tell a lot of the times. And they have some talent, not the kind of talent that I would use, but they have talent. But I think a lot of times you can see them thinking about what words they're going to use, and they're trying to put in, make sure they remember every line. And for people, that's exactly the way it is up there, And then if they forget something, they might get a little bit of heat in the back or something, for something stupid, which. If you had talent and you really belonged in wrestling, and boy, here we go back to that, you wouldn't need to do that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Or they'd stick a manager or somebody with you and get you through it. But they're so into changing with the times that now we have to have the great geniusing of the television writers.
Right.
And I think overall it has hurt the TV product.
Yeah,
overall.
Without a doubt it has. Perry James, listen, man, and I want to apologize to you because we're all the way out of time here, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface with you, and I'd love to have you back really quickly, as a matter of fact, maybe in the next couple of weeks to continue this thing.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely.
Yeah, because, you got a really great mind for the business, and there's so much more I want to get into with you about your career and about your thoughts on the current state of the business. But before we get out of here, real quick, tell everybody how they can find you online and how to get to that blog and your Twitter stuff and all that real quick.
It's real easy. Please come by and see us at www.classicwrestlingvideos.com. ClassicWrestlingVideos.com, and of course, if you're on Facebook, we have a Classic Wrestling Videos fan page, and Perry James fan page too on Facebook. Please come. I'd love for you to be my friend. I'll even chat with you. We'll talk about professional wrestling. I'm also on Twitter at @OnePerryJames. That's right. I'll get on there and vent, too. You may even catch me shooting on some of the writers. So please come and join me, and let's talk wrestling. And I'm so looking forward to coming back and being with Mr. Ricky Regal on Inside Wrestling Radio.
Very, very cool. Well, Perry James, again, man, I greatly appreciate it. And we look forward to having you back on here, and we'll get you on, like I said, right away. Thanks so much, and continued success to you, and we will talk to you very shortly. All right, that's going to do it for the interview portion of the program. We'll be right back here with more Inside Wrestling Radio coming up next.